One of the things politically that came up in the documentary was his comment that, Republicans buy sneakers too. That was pretty infamous. There was major critique back then that Michael Jordan didn't speak up about racial injustices. He was apolitical. And that bothered a lot of people. I guess my question is, should it have bothered a lot of people? Like, was that warranted?
Michael Jordan's apathy and apathy is the right word. You could say antipathy around race issues in America and political issues in America is interesting, and I wonder if that would fly now. It feels like almost every celebrity now is weighing in on this and lending their voice in some capacity. And I shouldn't even say celebrities; I should say regular folk who have some sort of bully pulpit and are able to speak to it, are raising it as an issue, allies or those who are impacted by it, and are thinking critically about what their role is in this. And I wonder if it would fly that uh, a Black American with as much power and cultural cachet as Michael Jordan at that time would be able to sit aside and sit out the conversation. I wonder if that would fly.
I don't think so. I think we're in such a different climate that, especially if Michael Jordan was still like the biggest superstar in the world, not even like basketball player, like for a large chunk of time, which is also explored in the documentary, he was the most famous person in the world. Hey everybody, it's Mike. I just want to jump in here post podcast recording to let you know that Michael Jordan did put out a written statement regarding the tragic killing of George Floyd. He and his brand also committed to donating $100 million to racial equality and education initiatives over the next 10 years. So just so you know, on the podcast, we were discussing the desire from many people for Michael Jordan to speak up more politically during his heyday, and would he now? Well, it certainly seems that in 2020, he is speaking up, he is making an impact. All right, let's go back to the show.
People didn't like that part. I kind of wrestle with this one a little bit myself because I think about what are the expectations of athletes, right? Like, what are we asking them to do? I mean, sometimes like there's that slogan going around, shut up and dribble, right? Like some guys do just want to shut up and dribble. And should they not be allowed to do that? They are paid to play a sport, right? Some guys decide to use that platform to do more, like a LeBron James, but other guys are just gonna say, like, I just want to play basketball. That's all I want to do. And I am not here to be your son or daughter's hero. I just want to play basketball. And I see both sides of it. I tend to go with the side that a player can be whatever he wants to be. Just as I don't have to speak out on racial issues if I don't want to, nor do you. No one has to, right? We aren't being asked to. You can say that because they have this platform that they should use it for good. Yeah, they should, but who are we to say that they should, right? Like we can't, yeah. Like when right now, I mean, celebrities are being critiqued for the things that they're saying about what's going on, not just in America but in Canada too, because some of them are saying something, others aren't, and then when they do, it's kind of coming out badly.
Oh, yes. I mean, celebrities saying the wrong thing. My God, that happens all the time. Look at that Imagine video that came out at the beginning of COVID-19. Tone deaf. But I think what Pratik and I are saying is, well, this is more about people like myself, stopping racism in its tracks when it happens and being really serious about it. B, we're in a time period where people have to use their privilege and their audience for good. Look at what is happening on the streets of the United States. We're desperate for it. I know it's a bit irrational to make it an expectation for people with clout to do this, but it's needed now, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I think that it's also a realization that you're not above it all, right? It doesn't matter who you are. You're still in this system with the rest of us. Regardless of how much money you make, regardless of who you are, how much name rec you get, how much fame you have. And like the incident in Central Park wasn't somebody who didn't know about racism or was uneducated about it. This was an example of a person who weaponized systemic racism against a black man, knowing that if she called the cops and said that there was a black man there, that there could be the escalation of violence and bad things would happen to this person, / he would be threatened and run away. So it wasn't somebody who was uneducated. It was somebody who's very educated and used that education against this person. So all of that is to say that this is now an especially important conversation to have, and it was important to happen. It was important to have then, and you didn't have that much of a conversation around it then. But now it's inexcusable. If you have even a little bit of cachet, you need to use it. And I don't think it would fly. I agree.
That's the only way things are going to change, right? We say it about gun control, so many different issues, the climate, police brutality, especially against people of color, obviously, and Black people. This can't be something we forget about a week from now, right? Like it's inexcusable, as you said. I'd love to get your thoughts on just the documentary in general as we wrap up here. I think it obviously delivered entertainment wise. I always said to myself at the end of each episode, wow, I could watch, 5 more of these right now.
Yeah.
It had nostalgia, it had drama, like the film footage, just, if you're a film buff like that, just tremendous, right? Like all the behind the scenes stuff that was buried in the NBA vault tape library. To see that stuff was just fantastic if you were a sports fan. And even if you weren't a sports fan, I think this documentary really appealed to a lot of non-sports fans too, because there were a lot of different characters that you get attached to, right? Amit, did you think this documentary delivered?
I think it delivered because the goal of it, at least my goal from it, was to learn more about Michael Jordan. And I learned a lot about Michael Jordan, the good and the bad. And that's what the documentary set out to do. We didn't know what it was going to set out to do, but that was the goal of it, right? And that was MJ's goal, is that he wanted people to understand why he was the way he was. And we got that, and then some, actually. We can critique the way it was edited or was produced, or not hearing from certain voices in certain scenarios in like 93 or 91 or 98. But he wanted this to be about him. And we got that answer. We learned how competitive he was. We learned about his relationship with his father. We learned about the Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, the duo, and how important that was to him, especially winning with the Bulls. We learned about Phil Jackson. We learned about Jerry Krause. We learned about all the necessary characters. If people don't really like how it was done, then maybe you were expecting a little bit more from it, and you just didn't get the answer that you wanted. But he wanted us to learn about him, and we did.
I think so too. I think the soundtrack was great, by the way. That was one of the finer points for me. I've been preoccupied with Michael Jordan for most of my life, and so this was like a really interesting documentary. It came at the right time. What was I going to be doing anyways?
Yeah.
So if there's any time to be quarantined or isolated, this is the time. I was like glad to see it. I consumed every episode as they dropped 2 episodes at a time. I consumed it as it came out. I rewatched it. The biggest thrill for me, even if it was just montages of Jordan dunks and fadeaways, I'd watch that on loop. So
yeah,
it was just so much fun to relive all that. And I can't imagine, I'm not old enough to know of that in that way and really have paid attention to it. So it was great. It was great to just get a glimpse of what it was like back then, and how dominant a force this person was. It also, by the way, because of the branding, it forced me to learn quite a lot about Michael Jackson. The Last Dance, Mike. And I'm holding up a Thriller record for the viewers at home.
There you go. What a perfect way to end. My thanks to Pratik Nair and Amit Mann for joining me on this episode of the show. This is Valente's Variety. What a treat, reviewing The Last Dance, the captivating docuseries about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. The podcast is streaming on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, and Spotify, and you can watch all of our content on our YouTube page. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.